2-year-old indie game that I really, really enjoyed. To the Moon is the brainchild of Can Gao, a Canadian designer who's made some intriguing works in the past. There's a non-interactive visual story, a fairly large-scale, at least for freeware, fantasy RPG, and something about a bird that categorically is not a horror game. To the Moon is the first commercial game released by his studio, Freebird Games, and it combines elements from all three of these previous efforts and then some. And the end result is, well, something very special. A journey through time, if you will, a tour through a person's life, and a whole rollercoaster of emotions and memories, vivid and suppressed. The word tearjerker could possibly be used, I guess, but there's a bit more to it than that. Getting the box of hankies ready usually means you're about to watch Beaches or something, whereas this is more, damn it, I've got something in my eye. Lots of things in my eye, in fact. Right, before we continue any further, it should be noted that To the Moon is basically all about story, and therefore discussing the story in detail is basically unavoidable. Therefore, consider this a very large spoiler warning. I will try and create this review in a way that respects and flows with the game's narrative, but really, you should have played the game before watching this video. And if you haven't played the game, then well, for heaven's sake do! It's bloody brilliant! And the 3 or so hours it will spend drifting through your life, well, they will be hours that you may well never forget. And it's only a few pounds or dollars or whatever on Steam. So anyway, with that said, well, let's get on with it. To the Moon starts with a job. We're somewhere in the not-too-distant future, and 2 doctors, the cynical, dedicated Eva Rosaline and the wisecracking, brash Neil Watts, these nicknames never going to catch on, work for Sigmund Corp, a company that gives clients the chance to obtain artificial permanent memories. Why? Well, usually so a person can die happy, with their wishes, hopes and ambitions fulfilled. Johnny is one such case. He lives in a house on top of a cliff overlooked by an abandoned lighthouse, he has little time left, and he wants to go to the moon. Why? Well, he doesn't know. All he knows is that he wants to do it. He needs to do it. It's more important than anything else. And hey, no one said the job would be easy now, did they? And so Eva and Neil have to travel through Johnny's life from his last memory all the way back to his childhood in order to give Johnny the desire to go to the moon and to grant his final wish. The first act is all about construction. You travel back by finding objects or places that are important and then finding mementos that link to a different place in the timeline. These could be almost anything, from a ragged old toy platypus to a jar of pickled olives. The game looks and feels quite a bit like an early 90s 16-bit role-playing game, and for good reason, because a lot of the time in this game is spent doing what everybody does in just about every classic RPG. All the downtime between plot points is spent looking at, well, useless junk. It's that old chestnut, isn't it? The treasure chest that sticks out in a sea of useless junk that's not important to you. But this is an inversion. The useless junk is the treasure. It's important to Johnny, therefore it's important to you. From a gameplay perspective, it makes for a nice take on what is a traditional building block of role-playing games. And note the graphics as well, the use of contrast, how vibrant they are, the subtle use of bloom. I don't recall many games that are as well lit as this one is. It actually looks like a memory. Parts of memories are vivid, others are kind of hazy. And it's backed by the wonderful soundtrack, a glorious piano-led affair that supports the story without being front and centre. In the end, you really couldn't imagine this story being backed by anything else. It's just lovely, vivid stuff. But anyway, it is time to delve headlong into that story. So, let's do it. The mementos lead to new memories, other characters, and questions. There's Nicholas, Johnny's friend since childhood, or Isabel, Nicholas's actress wife. And then throughout everything, there's River, Johnny's wife who died a couple of years previously, and you learn about her almost as much as you learn about Johnny. River could be described, I guess, as different. She's quiet. She has different social norms from other people, thoughts that some might consider strange, and she can't really hide any of this as well as other people can. We see River making dozens of origami rabbits and asking Johnny what they mean, or becoming emotionally dependent on completely inanimate objects, and we're placed somewhat in Johnny's shoes. we're not sure how to react or how to understand. Her condition, such as it is, does become clear enough, although the game doesn't explicitly tell you. In the spirit of that, I will say that the mention of real-life Dr. Tony Atwood tells you everything you need to know. There is, however, much more to River than a condition. Like anybody, she's a full person with a set of beliefs and of social norms. They're simply not, for lack of a better word, conventional. And it's rare for games, things that more than any other form of media enhance moods and personality traits for effect, to feature a sensitive, realistic, human portrayal of such a condition. But this game does. There's a great segment, almost a monologue, in the game from Isabel, who also suffers from River's condition but was diagnosed at an earlier age, and it would be remiss not to go through it here. With effort, it is possible to acquire a guise of social norms systematically. But you know what? I both envy and pity River. Me? I'm an actress because I've been doing it all my life, not only on stage but off stage, and at practically every moment. I've gotten good at it because acting is the only option I have. It is the only way for me to be normal. But River, she never did that. She remained an outcast and refused to learn how to step against it. I don't know if it was by choice or limit, whether by bravery or cowardice. There are days where I just can't stand faking it anymore, and then I realise that it's too late. The Isabel that people know of is all an act, and the real me has long become a stranger. And I think, in the end, I just envy her. It's mixed feelings, really. To the Moon is not a very special episode. Isabel is saying this to Johnny because Isabel wants Johnny to be able to understand River, which is something that he has not been able to do. Johnny and River's relationship, like all others, has its good moments, but on the whole, it is quite rocky. Near the end of Act 1, it is revealed that the reason Johnny wanted to go out with River in the first place, back when they were still in school, was simply because she was different. He was attracted to the condition more than he was to River herself. And this is an act that the game portrays negatively, and rightly so. People in River's situation, or who suffer from other mental disorders, or who deviate in any way from the societal norm, rarely want to be singled out for what makes them different. They want to feel like themselves. Johnny feels remorse over this in adulthood and confesses the truth to River, and this is why she starts making paper rabbits and asking Johnny what they mean. And he doesn't know. In the end, although they were together all their lives just about, Johnny was never able to fully understand River, to get her condition and to accept her for who she was. I mean, let's be honest, you don't schedule a team of doctors to play around with your memories on your deathbed because you led a happy life, do you? Now, throughout all of this, we lose the ultimate purpose a little. We are, after all, here to put Johnny on the moon. That's our job, and that will not change regardless of how we may feel about him. But of course, as Act 2 plays out, there is a stumbling block. Johnny's first memories are out of bounds for us, and we can't figure out why. And when our doctors, passengers in another person's story, try to give Johnny the desire to go to the moon, absolutely nothing changes. It's all the same. And the stakes are suddenly rising. We are also aware of the fact that, in reality, Johnny could die at any moment and the whole story would be lost forever. So where do we go? Well, the game pulls the good old Chekhov's gun card. The gun, in this instance, being a poor squirrel that the doctors laid waste to in their car right at the beginning. The smell of the roadkill is similar to a strange smell encountered by the doctors in Johnny's broken childhood memory, and so they use that smell as a trigger to put everything right. Smell is the strongest sense for memory recall, and even unconscious people are susceptible to it. And so, all is ultimately explained, and I will once again reiterate my spoiler warning from previously because this stuff is very important. Play the game! With that done, the story comes to a resolution. We go back to a carnival, to Johnny taking a moment out simply to sit on a log and look at the stars. And then, River shows up. Johnny's in her spot. They share a moment, they look at the stars. River describes them as lighthouses in the sky, and then River uses the moon to draw a rabbit from the stars. Johnny and River did not first meet in an awkward situation where the boy was attracted to a person just because they were different. They met here, as equals, sharing a moment together. And they say that if they don't see each other again, and in a way they never did, they'll meet again on the moon. And the paper rabbits were River's way of trying to remind Johnny of that meeting. But they weren't just that. It was during my second playthrough of the game, recording for this video, and in fact during that same speech from Isabel, that I realised River made paper rabbits as a way of telling Johnny that she loved him. And I had to stop playing for a while after that simply because the emotions were too much to take. I mean, I would say that I don't usually cry much at stories or media or whatever, but that would be a lie. In any case, it's a powerful moment, especially when you then pair it with the reason why Johnny can't remember a thing. We find out that he had a brother, Joey. All we see of Joey is a happy child who wants to be a writer, who is favoured by his mother but in any case loves his brother and shares everything with him. But before we see any of that though, we see his death. It was a total accident. He was in the one place at the one time, run down by his mother's car. A preventable tragedy, and one that would scar Johnny for life. He was given beta blockers to erase, or at least fog over, the memory, and he doesn't remember anything before the accident. At least almost nothing. The whole story is a pretty large punch in the gut. We may have had mixed emotions towards Johnny for quite a large part of the story, but in the end it's hard to feel anything but total sorrow and pity for him when we find out just how broken he was, through no fault of his own. And we want to, perhaps make things a little better for him, to perhaps give him the life that he could have had but was taken away from him. So, Eva takes the risk. She removes River from Johnny's timeline. Neil argues that this is the last thing Johnny could possibly want, and I was right there with him. It was wrong, it was horrible to do such a thing. The job may be fulfilled, but the whole reason for it would be gone. And I was mad when I wasn't able to prevent it. I didn't even know what to make of the game anymore. In the new timeline, Joey returns. Not killed in a tragic accident, he grows up to be a writer. Unaffected by tragedy and motivated by his brother, Johnny makes it to NASA. And I didn't know how to feel about it. I felt angry and disappointed at how events had turned out, almost exactly how I guess Neil would have felt about it. And then, Johnny met River again. She was also starting at NASA. On that day. She hadn't been erased from Johnny's mind, she had simply been moved, although Johnny's mind had to put the final piece together so that she would actually be there. But they both make it. We see the shuttle to the moon launch, we see them grow old together, live together, and lastly, as the moon comes into view, just as Johnny takes his final breaths in real life, we see them hold each other's hand. They were both able to, in their own way, say those 3 words. I love you. It is, of course, a bittersweet ending. I mean, there is the cynical way of looking at things and saying that, well, none of this happened in reality, did it? Joey still dies in a tragic accident, Johnny still lives a quite unhappy life, River is never able to fully make Johnny see. But, well, this was the way things could have happened. Indeed, this was the way things perhaps should have happened. This was the path that was marked out for Johnny until, unfairly perhaps, it was taken away from him. And ultimately, it's only in his mind. The doctors and us can feel as though we've at least done something worthwhile. In his last moments, Johnny was happy. Perhaps the most important thing of all is that through this process, he found out who he really was. And you can't exactly put any sort of price or demands on such a thing. If I were to try and sum up my own thoughts on the game, then well, I would call it a profound and a wholly human piece of work. A definite labour of love, and one that does not shy away from putting a player through tough times. It doesn't always take extreme violence to make a player want to, at points, stop playing the game. The storytelling is masterful. I wouldn't feel uncomfortable comparing this game to something like, say, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Not that it matters much, because To the Moon is a beautiful, deep story all on its own. Although one can imagine To the Moon existing as a book or a movie, it chose a game setting. All forms of media have their strengths and weaknesses, and the mere act of controlling the Doctors as they go through the story does a great job of placing you in their shoes. So much so that certain concessions to the Beast, the memory puzzles, the game of whack-a-mole, and particularly the obstacle course near the end, do feel a little like they shouldn't really be there, as if they get in the way of the story. However, this is the only criticism I really have. Simply put, you have to play this game. It may be a couple of years old now, and there may well soon be a follow-up, but you just have to play it. I feel that strongly about it. It'll run you through every emotion in the book, it'll stick with you for a long time afterwards, and hey, it may even end up being a perfectly good memory. But in any case, it's just so frickin' worth it. And with that said, it's time to end the video. Thank you for watching, and as always, wherever you are, whoever you be, have a good one, take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
But I don't mind if you're